Okay, this is Matthew Morrison, and I am here with,
Tanya.
and she claims that she had an out-of-body experience, and I just kind of wanted you to give me kind of when it happened, what happened prior to it, and then kind of what you felt like while it was happening, stuff like that.
Back in May of 2012, I had got up in the morning to see my husband off to work and was standing on the porch. And all of a sudden, I had some like pressure on my head, like somebody was squeezing my head really hard. It was very painful. Um, my husband went to leave and he said goodbye, and I did not answer him. And at this point, I had already done, passed out, or I was completely out. He had came back up on the porch and noticed that I was, out. He checked for a pulse and everything, and he could barely even feel one. And at this point, so he called 911. And I remember I can barely hear his voice at some point, and I was trying to talk, but I wasn't able to open up my mouth to talk, but I could just hear from a distance him trying to wake me up. And then he says he had slapped my face trying to get me to come to, which I don't remember that. And then at some point that I was still trying to open my mouth and communicate with him, I tried to open up my eyes, but my eyes felt so heavy. And when I thought I had opened up my eyes, I seen his face, but looking at myself through his eyes, I seen what he seen, how I looked, but I was not conscious.
So you were like
at this
seeing
point
through his eyes.
I was seeing through his eyes myself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still, like he said, at that point, I still was not waking up. And finally, I was able to open my eyes. And this probably was like 10, 15, maybe 10, 15 minutes that he was trying to get me to wake up. Once he got me awake, I did not really remember what had happened, other than the only thing I remember is I seen myself through his eyes.
How long did that last? Like, if you had to take a guess, like, we were able to see, like.
It feels like being able to see myself.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it seemed like it was like close to a minute, because I was still hearing him as he was talking, but seeing
Seeing your body.
seeing myself through his eyes, and it was just it was
really
unique, but at the same time it was very scary. And when I had got up and everything, once I had opened my eyes and stuff, I kind of felt like he said I lunged forward, kind of like my body wasn't in control, but I kind of lunged forward. I was sitting, and he said I kind of jerked, and then at that point I had opened up my eyes, and I felt like I was throwing up, but I didn't. Nothing had came up. And then when he got me in the house. By then, shortly after that, the paramedics showed up, and it seemed like everything was fine. They didn't find anything, wrong with me, but I still went to the hospital. And
so what did they find out at the hospital?
At the hospital, they found nothing. I wore a heart monitor. My blood pressure was like 60/40 at the hospital, and they still said there was nothing wrong.
Nothing to cause it, really, right?
Right. They said that it could have just been a drop in low blood pressure, which was kind of really odd, because I'd already been up for 20 minutes walking around, and normally it's something that happens when you get up too fast. And I had a headache for, why I was still in the hospital. I did only stay there either all day or just barely overnight, because it was in the early morning. So I think I left either late that night or early the next morning. Wore a heart monitor for 30 days. They found nothing. But the first week after it happened, I kind of didn't feel like completely coherent. I kind of stuttered a little bit. I was emotional. It's like my whole body was kind of out of balance for about a whole week. And it was really a scary kind of experience, because I had talked to my mom, and she said it's what basically I had died for that short period of a time. And I believe I honestly did. So...
now what's interesting, that I find interesting, I'm going to have to actually do some research on this. Most of the time, out-of-body experiences, the person is getting a bird's eye view. So you would have seen your husband talking to you. and you would have been like floating above. So it would be like your soul has left the body, it's floating above, watching the scene. But you actually, instead of floating above, you entered your husband and was able to see through your husband,
Yeah,
which is what it sounds like
that.
happened.
Yeah, I seen. It's like it's felt like I opened my eyes, but I seen his face, me looking at his eyes at myself, because after I came to and everything, I was able to tell him exactly
What he
how
said,
I
and
looked and kind of what he was doing in those moments, and he said I was correct, because other than that, how else would I
would
have
have known. Yeah.
known? Because
Because you, to him, you were out of it.
yeah, he could not even feel my pulse. He could not find a pulse, and he was, and because I could not even hear him calling 911. He said he called 911, and at that point, I didn't until he just kept. I guess he talked enough,
Yeah.
or to where I could hear him, but I tried to open up my mouth and talk, and
But
I
you,
couldn't, and I
yeah.
felt like I couldn't even open up my eyes until after I seen myself through him,
Yeah.
seeing my face and everything. And then it just, I mean, I vaguely remember just my body kind of jerked.
And then you lurched back into your own body. It
But
might
he
be
said,
why.
yeah, he said it was kind of like maybe not a, he said it was just like a, I just, my body,
Flew forward.
lunged forward real hard and went back because I was in the,
Yep.
sitting in a chair. And it was definitely, it was different.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that's why when you mentioned it, I was like, I was wondering if you'd let me interview you, because, you know, you hear about that, I hear about it, and it's slightly uncommon. Like, it doesn't happen, like, obviously all the time, but it happens enough that people have documented it. And, like you said, a lot of people, the reason why people have documented it is because, like you said, you were able to tell events that you shouldn't be able to tell, like what he said and stuff, while you were out. And that's what makes me kind of believe that, you know, it does happen, because um, you have these people that say, well, you said this, this, and this, and they're like, well, how do you know that you were unconscious? How do you know I was saying this? You didn't even, like you said, barely had a pulse. Yeah, and so it's really weird. And so I try to research and find out this stuff, and so when you mentioned that, I was like, oh, I gotta talk to her.
Yeah,
So
I could still to this day, because I was in May of 2012 and we're in 2019. I can remember exactly detail to detail getting up, getting coffee, telling him bye, and the moment he had made it to his truck. And if he wouldn't have came back, because I did not respond to him when he said,
yeah,
I love you, bye, if he would not have came back up on that porch, I honestly believe I would have been 100% dead.
probably
That I would not have.
your pulse dropped so low that it probably would have faded out if he hadn't have
Yeah.
checked on you.
But he knew since I didn't answer him, something was
Well,
wrong.
yeah.
So he came up, and I was already out. Just,
Yeah.
I mean, it was just a matter of seconds.
Another thing I noticed that was interesting, I won't keep you much longer, was the pressure that you said right before it happened. I'm wondering if that's what caused, you might have had like a small concussion from that pressure, because um, that might have been what caused the the thought processes being messed up for those next week or so. And you said you had you felt like you just couldn't think straight and everything. And
Yeah, the pressure came on right before I mean, passed out. It was like no pain that I mean, I've gave birth to kids, but it was like no pain I'd ever experienced. It literally felt something like someone
squeezing your
squeezed my head, and then it was like, boom, I was out.
Yeah. That's because
And-
your body can probably take so much pain, and then it shuts off, because your body's like, okay, this is too much. I'm just going to shut you off, because it's overfiring, and your brain is, and so it shuts you off. And that's why a lot of people faint due to pain, is because that's the body's thing to get it back into homeostasis, is it shuts it off. It's like like you turn off a computer, you know, whenever it's messing up, that's what your brain does. It's like, okay, you're messing up, I'm going to turn you off.
That's interesting. But yeah,
Yeah.
I like I said, I can remember all the details as far as what I can remember, what happened and everything, still to this day. And you wouldn't think a person could,
Right,
but
yeah. But it was so
a
almost
traumatic
traumatic, yeah,
event.
that it's just
So-
logged in, yeah. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
This house is haunted by ghosts, and they've been talking about us like vultures to the dead. They circle around us.